th this particular prediction was, I felt, rather, I don't know, significant in many ways. It's certainly the first time that I've ever judged alone 20 viewers, and that was certainly a nice educational experience for me. And the outcome, where we had this confidence ranking of 3.5, which indeed turned out to be actualized, and a CR5, which wasn't actualized. Okay, I'm getting an echo. Okay, so it really wasn't the bandwidth. Okay, now I seem better, so I don't know what happened. Maybe somebody turned off. Maybe it was a feedback echo. Anyway, I'm really at the point, in addition with what happened with the Caldwell example, which I hope you'll all take a look at, we seem to be going through a phase where it's like our subconscious minds are trying to communicate with us. I mean, if you think about ways it has, if you take the point of view, which, as you all know, I now take and believe and living it, that consciousness is like the fundamental. Consciousness is where everything comes from. We get to experience our conscious moments, but it's the subconscious that kind of provides that through our personalities, through our egos, in complicated way. Okay, in complicated ways that we're all trying to figure out. So I really feel like our sub was trying to tell us something here. And how can it possibly do that? It can only do that by communicating in the ways that it has, and it seems like remote viewing gives it a lot of opportunities. Anyway, I'm coming from a point of view like that with what I'm seeing. I've shown this one many times, and I do love it. A poor sort of memory that only works backwards. All of us by this time are well past the point where we doubt precognition. We're trying to integrate it into our lives and sort of gather some meaning from what that all means. And gathering the meaning, the left brain is a bit of a challenge, but long term, I believe we're integrated beings, and so I believe that's a valuable endeavor. And the old right side, intuitive side of the brain sort of already gets it. It's the one that's connected. But the left side of the brain, and when we're talking, you know, that's all I can talk with and talk to. But things got a little bit more complicated with this Caldwell example, which was just so marvelous, right in our face. Many of us were there firsthand to witness it. And that's this telepathic precognitive example that Nancy and Mia and now the rest of us have gotten to experience. Really shows that the subconscious mind seems to have access to everything, past, present, future, eternal. Now, how do we get our arms around that? And that's what we're working on. What a wonderful challenge and mystery to be taking on. And yet that's exactly what most of us are doing, and I believe taking it on in roughly that fashion. Okay. What I really would like to do today, and the purpose of doing this prediction, was to have all of you experience what I felt was necessary in terms of getting you to understand the wild card, because the wild card is a application of the subconscious which is just much more powerful than predicting photosites. And so, as you know, the front loading for this target was it could be anything but a photosite. That was the only front loading. So that still left open everything. And that's the point of the wild card. The wild card gives you an opportunity to choose and pick things which are of potential interest to you. So that was the motivation of doing this prediction, and I'm really just so pleased that so many of you, we had 20 people provide 2 transcripts each. So what you did here was an example of a broader class of targets. And what I would like to do now is take you through a feedback session in a fashion which I think is reasonable. It's the kind of thing that I do. Is it the best for you? I don't know. Again, as I hope you all appreciate now, one of the primary motivations for what I'm doing here is to motivate everybody else to take on quite seriously this concept of self-actualization, self-realization. So what I'm going to be doing here is like a guide. We'll do it now this way, and then you'll modify it in ways that make sense for you. What I do believe is critical to get is that precognition does begin with the feedback. This is the time when you know the truth point. And I think part of our learning and training is to take this truth point and communicate the information with your remote viewing session to learn how to strengthen that entanglement, because that's our objective, is to share that information. And why it doesn't happen all the time, why the sub sometimes entangles you with other things, is part of the mystery. And guess what? The subconscious is going to be your best guide in understanding that. Okay, as those of you who watch the game know that it was the confidence ranking 3.5 side that won. That had the coordinate 445981, so that was one of your transcripts. What I would like to do now is I am going to simply tell you what the feedback target is, and then I would like you to immediately respond. And the immediately comes from, I want the response to come from your subconscious, react immediately to the target. And so just say it out loud. Yeah, it's going to be garbled and all that, but you're really saying this to yourself. Okay? So you're going to respond by saying out loud whatever the associations are that come to mind about the target I'm about to tell you.
Excuse me, Marty.
Uh-huh.
Are you wanting us to all be unmuted for this?
No. In fact, I would just like you all to participate. I want to make this kind of an exciting, interesting feedback session because I think that helps entanglement.
No, I was asking, do you want us to be unmuted?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a problem with Steve. The echo is coming from him, and so I've muted him all this time.
Oh,
so,
I see.
Plus some other people have muted themselves.
Okay, well, if you want to be muted, that's fine. I mean, the main thing is that you say it out loud. And if you want to be muted, it doesn't hurt anything. But it's not like I purposely want people to be muted. So I appreciate what you said, Tom.
Maybe we should try and fix Steve. Steve, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. It goes muted, unmuted. I have no idea why.
Okay, well, right now it feels
Seems to be
okay.
gone now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Are you
Marty, do you want us to say our emotion or pictures that we've drawn, or what is it specifically that you
at
want us to
at
see?
this point I want a reaction from your subconscious. So get yourself quiet. So this would be the equivalent of you seeing in the old days or the previously a photo site, and like the first thing you should do is you kind of react to it, but you react to it kind of from your subconscious. Again, any kind of communication that goes on is going to be going on at the subconscious level. Okay? So whatever comes up, you just react and say it. Ready? Okay, yeah, I am getting that echo again. Steve, maybe we... is it...
Okay. Do
Okay.
you have two different things up, like two computers nearby or something like that?
Marty does.
Me, no.
Okay. Okay, let's just live with it. At this point...
I can turn the mute off, or the mute on, or whatever. Is it better or worse, or...
Well, you're not muted. Let me mute you. I'll mute you. Okay, it seems... I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Okay, Chris, let me just quickly, we're about to do a feedback session. I'm about to give you the target which I chose. And what I would like is just for everybody to say out loud their very first associations, having a sense that it's coming from their subconscious. So it's just a quick response, the kind of remote viewing stuff that you get, which you would usually write down on your page. I don't want you to write it down. I just want you to say it. I want you to do a reaction. Okay? So the target is a person. The person is Abraham Lincoln. Give me your responses. Quick, quick.
Not much of a match.
Keep going. Give me.
Serious.
Newsroom. Hypocrite, I had written.
Go. Give me impressions from your sub.
Light.
Abraham Lincoln.
Strong, gentle, and wise were mine.
I had big, tall, deaf, wonder.
Okay. Okay. So that's the kind of first thing which I think happens when you first see your target. Okay, now get out your transcripts. One of the other things which I always believe is important as part of a feedback session, we've now really started our feedback session, is take a look at your transcript and mark on it. I like to use a colored pencil just to make it more obvious, a different color than whatever I did it in. Okay. Or some people don't like to mark up their transcripts because they save it. Again, the viewer's in charge. You might note it on another sheet of paper and note what you think are the matches. And as you're doing this, try to make it meaningful. Again, this idea of making it meaningful, maybe bring some emotion, whatever. We're all working to figure out how to increase this entanglement with what went on with your remote viewing session. And we've all seen that it happens. You know, we've all seen so many examples of precognition now that that's not the issue. We're well past that. We're working to maximize it. So looking at your sessions, mark what the matches were. And Okay. And now let's talk about actually doing a feedback session. And this is what I call a front-loaded RV session. You now know what the target is. Okay, in this case, Abraham Lincoln. The idea here is to do it in a way that feels comfortable. You're intending to improve your RV senses. So one of the things you're doing here is coming from a place of RVing. This is not an intellectual. This is a session like your RV session where you know the information is coming from the sub. And you work to get into that space. And front loading is always a challenge. That's why most remote viewers don't like front loading. And yet here you are front loaded. But let's say you've just looked at your transcript and you kind of want to work on getting better information, in this case about a person. This happens to be a person. Maybe you've thought you aren't good at people. Well, now try to get some information about Abraham Lincoln, maybe. Or the Civil War, or who knows what. But allow yourself to pick up information more from the sub, and at the same time, your sub and you want to learn about this remote influencing of yourself. It's this entanglement issue. And the feedback session is the time where you're paying attention to these kinds of issues. This is your time to learn about this communication process. And my feeling is that these sessions should be short, but focused, and you just let your sub communicate with you. So what I'd like to do now is just give you 5 minutes to do this, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to mute everybody, and in 5 minutes I'll unmute us and we'll talk, or unless there are any questions.
Marty, can you say in one sentence again what you want us to do?
I want you to do your feedback session, an actual session, pencil and paper. It's a front-loaded remote viewing session because you know the target. Your idea is to do it using your remote viewing senses and allow your sub to give you that information. So more information on Abraham Lincoln, maybe in one sentence, the remote viewing session you wish you had done several days ago.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, you can begin wrapping it up. Okay. Okay, very good. So give me a reaction. How did the feedback session feel? Somebody talk to me.
Trying to pick what we wish we would have seen. Is that right?
That's one way of, yeah. What you wish you would have put down on your transcript, but in a way having it come from your sub. You're sort of asking your sub, hey, how come you didn't put this? But what did you do? What did you put on yours?
Mine were more straightforward, so I'm not sure that connection with the sub, but I mean everything's connected, so I guess it is. But I mean mine was things like top hat and then, you know, some of the things that I associate more like peace and freedom and slavery.
Yeah, perfect. That I mean, that is sort of the thing that I would expect, you know, to come up. And again, with it being front-loaded, it's a little unusual. On the other hand, what you're doing is trying to light up just the kind of stuff you wish you had gotten at your remote viewing session. And the idea is that in the future, knowing that you're going to do a feedback session, your subconscious can know where to go to get the information, because this is the truth time. That's the strategy. That's the idea. And I believe if you know, it's a place to start and improve as you go forward in your own work. Any other?
I had a funny error that maybe you could learn from my pain. During the drawing, during the actual viewing, during the cool-down session, we'd been watching monster movies because it's Halloween. And so in my cool-down, I had this distinct feeling of death and a grave and a hand reaching from the grave with a tombstone and this top hat, and gosh, what if I had drawn that? I told myself, get rid of that. That's AOL, and I didn't draw it, and so I drew it in this session. But it's one of those experiences of draw it anyway, no matter how absurd it is. Don't discount it.
That's exactly right. Get it down on the piece of paper, and if you wanted to, you could have written probably AOL because of Halloween. But
yes.
Then as the judge, I would have had to take that into account. Very important lesson. That's the whole idea, is to get down these fleeting things as they come. And if they come during the...
I have a comment on that, and I'd like to talk about that subject. I don't want to get off the subject too much, but when I'm doing a session, I always get lots of AOL, and I really don't write most of it down on my sketch, and that's because I am making a judgment while I'm doing the session as to whether I think that's coming from my guidance or intuition or not, because usually it's not. Usually it's AOL, especially, you know, when you're obviously thinking about something you've been thinking about recently. So
it's
if
hard
I
to
put
know.
down everything that I came in during my session, the real stuff would get swamped.
Well, now, you see, in maybe both these examples, if it happens very early on, like at the beginning of cool down, it's totally understandable. And, you know, that's why the Halloween example is sort of an interesting one, because I agree, most of the time when you're beginning your cool down, before you kind of clear out your mind, you know, that stuff is probably not relevant. But there's a point, and here's a judgment. There's a point where it comes where I do believe the stuff that starts coming in should be put down. But I do
agree
understand.
with you, but it is a judgment. You have to feel what the right stuff is. That's my point.
And I agree, and it's my understanding that that's what Joe McMonagle does. And that's where the judgment...
But it seemed to me like you were just advising Nancy to put everything down.
And I do. That is the advice I give, and the viewer's in charge. When the viewer feels confident enough that they believe they can truly distinguish the stuff that's AOL from what's going on in their sort of previous life, in the normal life, you don't want to put that down. But we've all seen lots of examples of AOLs during the middle of the session where you mark it as an AOL because you think it's your intellect, and yet it was right on. You know,
Yeah,
you named
yeah.
something.
No one's perfect, of course.
Right, and so there's that judgment there. And often I do advise, and I'll continue to advise, putting it down, because if you happen to name it exactly right, that's wonderful.
Well, I think what I was talking about, I guess, is what you call your cool down, which is not usually what I call it, because I just wait until the feeling comes, and until I know that I'm not thinking this anymore. It's just something coming out of nowhere that it's not something I was thinking about. And that after that, I pretty much put everything down.
Well, that's perfect. You've just said in different words what I said about cool down. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Any other comments? Someone else was trying to say something. I really want to discuss this because feedback is the beginning of precognition. Right? How else would you know you did precognition if you didn't get some feedback in the future to validate your session?
Well, I can talk about my feedback if nobody else wants to. I started out like Teresa was saying, with the top hat and just describing what he looked like, but then it was just sort of like feeling stuff, like what I said when I first hit was strong and gentle and wise, and then it went on from there and had some other words about active and purposeful and strong decision maker and stuff. But the very last thing I got was something that was real from and I thought that was the most significant thing of all, and that was that this man used his intuition to make all his decisions.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that came up from your sub. You see, that's beautiful. That's just the way, that's beautiful. And you keyed in to the target in a way that came from your sub, and that's the idea here, because you're communicating through your sub with your sub, and I believe as you learn and do that more and more, that information then is also going to be available, more readily available at remote viewing time. Thank you, Tom. Anybody else? Okay. I'd like to show you now, and I didn't have time to do as much of this as I would have liked because I have a life. But I want to show you examples, and then I'm actually going to show you my spreadsheet with more information of why this was a 3.5. And remember, the other one, which I am absolutely not going to tell you anything about, but your subconscious connected up with that one even better than this one. So your precognition is working. Our challenge is to get it focused in the way we want, to convince our subs that it makes more sense to go to the feedback session than to go to my mind. I'm the only one that knows this, so you must have gotten the information from there. But notice here, this and Dave, you're here, so this happens to be Dave's. And out of nowhere in his session, and when I was reading it, it's like I couldn't believe it, because out of nowhere came Ku Klux Klan. Was that your experience as you were doing your session? Did it just like pop in, or what was your experience with Ku Klux Klan?
Well, I was reading your mind, and that's how I came up with it.
That it definitely came out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, that was funny. Now, you said that you're the only one that knows the target, so you must have got it from me. Well, I guess we did, as freaky as that is. So, Yeah. So it just popped in, just like Tom was saying, you know, you say cool
Yeah.
down. I like the word cool down too, but, you know, he gets to a point where he realizes he's not thinking and things just come in. So that's how we all do it, you know. I don't think it's any different.
And then in your other session, and I think that's right, you just, I guess, trusting your sub and just letting it pop in. But understanding it literally popping in versus being an AOL type thing connected to what previously popped in is part of the art here anyway. But anyway, that was beautiful, so I obviously had to give that a lot of credit. Though I will tell you, one of the things which I did, and it showed up more clearly here, this happened to be a bleed-through. Bleed-through is with us, but I saw a union, but I went in and actually looked up when trains and everything started. And it turned out trains started right around the time of the Civil War, which was interesting. Or at least the intercontinental and all that kind of stuff. So,
railroad.
and part of what I think is valuable as feedback, and especially when you do WildCard yourself, is to do some research and stuff like that. Helps maybe light it up some more. And then look at this one. This happens to be Rick. I don't know. Is Rick here? I don't know if Rick joined us today. His time scale is different. No, I don't see him. But this was from Rick's summary. The target site appears to be a singular, possibly important life form leading others, or who is the leader of others, possibly black people.
Oh, wow.
It appears as though they are happy, joyous, as though they have had a win over something, possibly political or similar. Right? So you understand how I had to give it a wagerable side. And now I'm going to show you, nobody objects to having theirs or anybody else's scores shown, do they? I suppose I should ask, but I've asked this a million times and everybody has told me they don't object. This is just one of many.
Marty, before you go on, I had to mute Steve again.
Okay.
He wants to add something now. Unmute him.
Okay,
Also,
sure.
Steve, you can also type in the chat box if you want.
No, but go ahead. Why don't you talk, Steve?
Well, I'm not sure what to say at this point.
Okay. What did you want to share with us, Steve?
I'm not sure what to share at this point.
You want to say something about your feedback session? Because you were muted, so you couldn't talk.
I guess that's what he's asking you.
Oh. Well, it was similar to the other people's. I just thought of him as, the president and what he did ending slavery and being from Illinois and that sort of stuff.
Did you get the sense, though, that it was coming from kind of from your subconscious as opposed to your intellect?
I didn't really get the sense of it coming from one or the other or whatever. It's just Lincoln and I associated all those things with him. It could very well be intellect. I mean,
But you see, that's beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing that, because the purpose of the feedback session is to begin to work on getting better and better communication with the information that the subconscious can supply, which is sort of a whole different class of information that you get from the intellect. So, and so even the fact that you're thinking that way and we're talking that way, that's the purpose of the feedback, is to increase that level of communication, because the intellect can't do precognition. It's the subconscious that does precognition.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the time. See, that's what I'm saying here. This is the time to do that. Okay, so let me go here, and the two things I put in here were the highest scored ones, but we had support from other people. Rough Seas, Danger Lurks, Hard Work, Just to Survive, Black Demon Mask with teeth prominent, but a smile. I thought that was interesting. And the Rough Seas and all that, and someone else drew a ship. I actually went and looked up. I didn't know if they even had any navy or anything like that in the Civil War. Turns out that they did. A Proper Lady, old-fashioned, that was like the Old South maybe. Here was a BT one. On the main one, I saw Bumpy Rough, but over here was a sketch of a man. Look, you know, somebody else had a sketch, definitely didn't look like Lincoln. This one was close enough that I wrote it down. But then encouragement, and then wrote, "This too shall pass, future is bright, best day," and this person was speaking. Here is one which I thought maybe was the Civil War: crumbling, vernacular matters, war and battle, ancient, historic, people resting, campfire, had a bomb, steel toe. Anyway, you can see where this one deserved for sure a 3.5. I thought occult was interesting here, and it turned out Abraham Lincoln was into the occult. He had two children which died relatively young, and he used to go to seances and things like that. And so, Tom, your comment about intuition may very well fit in with all of that.
Hey, Marty, I got an interesting thought. You said steel-toed boots. You know, I think of jack boots. I think of kind of, I don't know. It just gave me the thought that when you think of Lincoln, you could see him at any time in history. You could see him when he was alive, and you could see whatever his legacy is now. Yeah, so it isn't not just
the subconscious can do.
Marty?
Yep.
Another point here about Lincoln, probably most of us have heard this, but you know, he had a precognitive dream about his own death and reported that.
That's right.
You know,
and
someone's lying in state, and who is this? The president is dead. So, yeah, I hadn't known about the seances, but he definitely had that precognitive dream too.
Yep, that was well documented. I wrote that someplace. That's exactly right. And notice, as a judge, I mean, you all did very well with this kind of target. That was it. I didn't have a picture. I didn't have anything. I just had the words Abraham Lincoln. So, again, connecting this with the wild card, you can see how broad you can choose something that you're interested in. Now, the other part of this, which I do want to focus on, is what's going on with this other side being so strong. Why are our subconscious minds doing that? I'm going to transit.
I have an idea. Can I say something?
Please.
Yeah, I think the idea is that maybe we need to tweak the system and just give you 2 transcripts that focus on the actual the actualized side, and not try to draw 2 different pictures, and possibly experiment with eliminating the wild card that seems to be, you know, the flavor of the month, just like the beacons were, you know, 6 months ago. So we keep on kind of grabbing at straws, but I've learned in business and life, you know, you don't want to do a lot of end runs if you can go directly to where you need to be. So it's something that I personally started experimenting with, like last few months here and there, and I think I'm doing okay with it. I mean, you and Chris are doing the aging, but I think maybe that's something we need to do. We just need to focus on the winning side and negate the other thing.
Okay, let me,
don't worry about it.
Steve. Let me. That was Dave, right?
Yeah.
Let me respond to that at this level. What you have suggested, and one other person suggested, happens to be quite reasonable. But I believe what you have to do is recognize that this is a feeling that came from you and might be just right for you. And I encourage you to continue doing it, and let's watch if your hit rate goes way up. It is not necessarily right, and in fact, I would discourage other people from doing it because you said it, that they should each look for something that makes sense for them to improve their own personal hit rate. You understand what I'm getting? You understand what I'm getting at there?
I completely understand that it's a very individualistic process.
That's exactly right. So you go ahead.
Could Dave say again exactly what he does? I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear.
Let me put it in your words, because this is the second time this suggestion has come up. And if it resonates with you, do it. What the person basically does, this is the words I would use, what the person basically does is says, my wildcard session is going to also be whatever the actualized target is.
I can give you the winning words is what I and I have experimented with bunches of different things, and you're very much in my head, and I use a lot of your words. They seem to fit for me. But in this particular case, what I do is I am mixing it up, but I say, show me the winning target. And that's it. You know, I ask the universe, the matrix, however you want to do it. You can say it in prayer, which I think works for some people. You have to figure out what mode works. You say, just show me the winning target.
And you do that.
Show me the winning target. That's it.
And you do that for both coordinates.
Yes.
So what I'm doing is I'm putting that in the context of the wild card, which I'm not prepared to give up. The wild card is for the long term, for people who aren't, you know, I know your mindset, Dave, and your mindset is the wagering. So I understand that. Some other people might have other things they want to do with the wild card. But this system is flexible enough to permit that. You're basically having your wild card be, show me the winning target. I have no problem with that. But that's personal to you. Keep doing it. In fact, for you, notice this came from the other one. So, I mean, you know, this is an example of where that worked very nicely, thank you. And notice, as a judge, I took it into account. So everything is aligned very nicely.
Okay. In this particular one, I'm not saying I actually did it that way. But yeah, maybe my subs train that way. Yeah. I think the wild card we shouldn't get rid of it for people who want to use it. I think I think the wild card makes the process much more interesting, and it has a much bigger wow factor. But for the point of wagering on and making bets, it isn't as significant. But for the 1ARV process, it makes it infinitely more interesting to, you know, hit your wild card too. It's like really cool.
You're using a wild card. Dave, you're using a wild card. And when you do your feedback session, I really, really encourage you to do it with both transcripts, knowing what your wild card is. So you would go to this transcript, you would say, oh, cool, look at that. I got the train. That connects up with the Civil War. And then write down even more. And in that one, you might get more information on the Civil War and how it connected with the train, but information from the subconscious. So in your case, your wild card was actually this transcript. Okay? So you can still, and I hope you will, still think of this as being the wild card. And who knows, you may even come up with, as you do this more and more with your approach, differences in the kind of information you get from the wild card versus the one that hit. You know, you're going to keep learning whether you like it or not, because your sub is working with you. You're working in this strange area, and your sub That's right. Your sub is working to teach you.
That's funny.
So you just keep taking it and be open to getting better and better and learning more and more.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I have a wild card comment.
Mm-hmm.
We are fortunate enough here in Idaho to have 2 remote viewers in the same house. So Sam and I have decided to spice up the wild card by making the wild card the same for both of us so that we can have a conversation about it and look at it and get excited, whereas it's not a boring thing. We have the same one. So this is when it's a photo site, not when it's open-ended. And the last 2 times we looked at the wild card before the game was done. So before the game. So if the game's in the evening, we looked at it that morning. And we looked at the wild card and then looked at our transcripts and then chose from our transcripts which one of mine looks more like the wild card, which one of Sam's looks more like the wild card. And it's been uncanny, but we were able to decide before the game which coordinate was the wild card, and then had conversation with Chris to see if that supported what he got for the group prediction. And twice it's been right on. It's been good support for what Chris's judgment has been. So that kind of amped it up for us a little bit.
Wow. That is, wow. That is extraordinarily innovative, Nancy.
Well, this whole thing is, it's all magic.
Well, it really is, but you know what, gosh, that might, okay, let me absorb that a little bit. I really like that because, notice, struggling, and frankly, we've been struggling with this since the beginning because this is a funny kind of displacement in a way. Notice the other target, what might be considered certainly from a wagering standpoint, the wrong target, more people connected with in a rather good way. And yet, the way this would work ideally is this wildcard side wouldn't match the I now call it the indicator target, since it's not a photo site, so it's an IT. The indicator target, it wouldn't match it at all. Now, what you're doing is coming up with it wouldn't match the one that I as a judge have. If I understood what you said, is what you did is you matched beforehand what you know is going to be your wild card, and if you get a good match on that, then it is going to be the wild card.
Yeah, and so that means whatever that coordinate is, the other one is the hit.
Right.
So the one that we match up is the wild card, and we don't know. We haven't had any conversation with Chris before we do this.
I understand. It's blind. Wow. So you're doing self-judging.
Yeah, but we're both looking at it.
It's blind. Yeah, it's self-judging on when do you choose a wild card? When do you choose, in those cases, was the photo site?
Hi, this is Chris.
What?
Yes, hear me?
Yeah. Chris, you tell them what the wild card is?
No, I discussed it. Go ahead, Nancy.
We choose the wild card. I have a system, and my system is to go into Lynn Buchanan's website, and he has 4 years of photos,
right?
Targets. And so I choose the one I don't look at it. I choose the coordinate that best matches the date of the game, of when we're going to look at it.
Okay, so it's basically random.
So
it's basically random.
But it doesn't feel random because I have a system, so it's kind of an odd.
No. I understand. That. Yeah, go ahead.
No, this is Chris. I just wanted to clarify one thing because I discussed this with you, Marty, earlier in the week.
Right.
Sam and Nancy are previewing the wild card prior to the event. So previewing the wild card and finding common denominators, if you will, is allowing us to, is like a check and balance. So even though we may be making an under prediction, let's say, then Sam and Nancy's over, I'll give her the coordinate. I won't give her any images, but I'll give her the coordinate for the alternate target. So she is previewing the wild card prior to the event taking place.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Wait, I thought
I'm not following this at all. Can you guys state this in 2 sentences or something?
I thought I understood this except this very last part.
Okay, so I think the complication is we know what our coordinate is. I mean, we know which target is going to be our wild card, but we haven't seen it. So what we don't know is coordinate 812610, is that over or under? We don't know that. So we take a look at our wild card, decide which one of our transcripts matches the wild card. Then and this is the day of before the game happens, and we take a look at the wild card. Then we talk to Chris and say, Chris, our wild card shows that it's going to be 445981. Does that support what you have? And he says yes or no, but twice. We've only done it twice, but it's worked both times.
Right.
So your wild card does match what the prediction is then?
In other words, it is the accurate wild card. So
Yes,
if they get the wild card coordinate right, that supports, and I think that's what you were telling me, Chris, now, that supports Chris, who was about to recommend the other coordinate as being the winning coordinate.
Yes. Although both times he's already put it out there, so we're just doing this on the side because we don't know what we're doing.
Wait, he put it out.
No.
Go ahead.
Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, it validates the prediction. We're using it as a validation.
Correct. Correct. And does she give it to you as part of your AJ process? In other words, does she give it to you in time for you to use it, Chris?
Yes, because it'll make me feel more confident in that if Sam and Nancy are sharing a wild card, and that is basically validating that is going to be the wild card.
Yep, that's going to be their wild card.
So, and then it'll say, well, then the other should be the group feedback.
Correct. And you also know whether or not.
So you've done this twice, and both times the wild card was in fact a non-actualized outcome. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
How about the actualized one? Did they also happen to do well on that one as well?
Well, one we passed, and last week we hit.
And how about their 2 sessions? Did they happen to be pretty good on the actualized side as well, with the actualized coordinate?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is very innovative. See, that's what I just love about letting each person come up with what resonates for them. Chris had discussed this with me, Nancy, earlier, but I just, you bringing it up again was incredible.
We started doing it in an effort to make the wild card meaningful, as opposed to just looking at it and being huffy, oh, that's a match or that isn't a match, and shutting it away.
Yep.
We had a conversation about it and made it more fun, at least between the 3 of us, Sam and Nancy, talking about it and then getting Chris involved.
Right. No, and I think that's great, and hey, keep doing it. 2 out of 2 support is really just right.
The fact that you made it more fun is a significant factor too, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I agree. Hey, this has to be fun, and it's got to be fun for the sub too. However the sub defines sub. What's that?
Before you move on, I need to point something out here, and you know, in the context of changing probabilities.
Yeah.
Your 5, this target CR5 was for the under outcome. It was under 42.5 points, I believe, correct?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Well, with 11 minutes left in the game, only 16 points had been scored. And then 28 points got scored in the last 11 minutes.
Wow.
So, and the outcome was only 1.5 points above the line. So, in my view, the probabilities changed, and the 5, and it's also the fact that it was so close to the line explains why we got hits on both of the sites, 5 and 3.5.
Yep, that's one hypothesis, and I know that's the way you think about these things, and I don't, and that's going to be around forever.
Until you change, you mean?
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, Tom.
Marty, can you show us that spreadsheet again? Because I'd like to see how you scored my session.
Sure.
And maybe other people would like to see all the scores.
Yeah. Well, I won't show the other one though. But
no.
Yeah.
No, just this one.
Yeah. Here, let me go start from the top, and I'll go down slow enough. I don't know if you saw any more, but I saw just humanoid in yours.
No, I agree. It should have been a 1 or lower, maybe.
Yeah.
I was generous on mine.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think
actually, in mine you only saw a person, but I had a guy riding on a wave, and what that hit me as is Abraham Lincoln riding on a wave of emotion at the Civil War. So that was a match for me.
Yeah.
I can see how a judge wouldn't get that as a match.
And I could see how you would, you know, especially after the fact. And if that had come into my head as a judge, I might have given it a little more credit too. But you know.
But I didn't have a match on anything else. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. But some of you did match on the other side, and that's right now. That's our biggest mystery, and coming up with innovative ways and sharing ideas and discussing it is kind of what I see as the next phase for us in terms of working at an individual level. We are all now, I believe, well past the details of the protocol being the key. This general protocol, in my opinion, has everything in it we need to move forward. Now, does that mean the tweaks that we've done, like with the beacon, and I think for some people the beacon may be just right to get you to go to the right one. Saying things out loud, which I encourage, is a kind of beacon because it can vibrate in your body. But it ultimately comes down to working with your subconscious and getting your subconscious to go to the feedback session where indeed you know the truth. And the wild card, what we did here, one of the purposes of the wild card is to keep it interesting. Nancy, that was one of the things that you certainly come up with, is an interesting wild card approach. And not knowing which is which makes both of your sessions interesting. I'm sure you have no problem. And it's interesting that you're also getting hits on both sides. And so this is working great for you. Continue doing it. But each person needs to get over this going to what, and I don't know any other way, and if someone has another way of looking at it, but it looks like the information is coming from the judges. The information, because nobody else knows what the other indicator target was, and I'm not going to tell you in the normal way people tell things. And yet many of you, and it wasn't just 2 people, it was many of you, did a very good job of describing the other target. So while we may have differences, you hear Tom and I go back and forth about some of this big pictures. Is it known exactly? Do probabilities change? All that may very well be true, but what's also true is that some of you are going and reading my own mind, because I was the only one that had that information and put it out in this universe of collective consciousness general idea, as opposed to getting it from your own mind in the future. That perspective, at least, is the one which I think is very valuable to hold, where you're learning how to remotely influence yourself. Now, this is so there's a perspective. We've talked a lot now, and I think we'll continue talking at this level of, we're at the point now where this is very much a personal journey. It's your consciousness. It's your consciousness journey. Consciousness is the thing you know better than anything else. This conscious moment can't be denied. Consciousness is the fundamental, seems to be a good place to come from. And paying attention to what your sub provides and building up this communication, building up this self-actualization, self-realization. Don't ask somebody else anymore. You've been around the track enough. You've asked the questions enough. It doesn't mean you don't listen. There's new information out there. There's new angles. I'm always looking for new information. But ultimately, even there, you're taking responsibility yourself for evaluating it. But I believe it's time to look within yourself and build up this communication with your sub, which is what you do when you do remote viewing and when you do your feedback sessions. Okay, so remember, the motivation for all of this was trying to keep it interesting and meaningful with the wild card. And I hope the Abraham Lincoln example was a good example of showing how general you can do that. It doesn't have to be a PhotoSite. But bringing in interest, Nancy came up with another interesting way of doing that. But the idea is that you keep your interest looking forward. You don't want to look at the judge. You want to keep looking at yourself. You want to keep be engaged with what you're doing. And you got to keep it meaningful, because the subconscious mind needs to be engaged as well. And this meaningfulness part of it is also very personal. Lynn Buchanan, many, many, many years ago, because I heard him say this when I took, I think, his basic class, and that had to be at least 10 years ago now, had the greatest statement, which was, you cannot bribe a dog with $1. And basically, when you start doing your communication with the sub, you need to find out what the sub wants to be bribed with, in the best sense of the word, bribed. It's a dog, likes food. What is your sub like? What would your sub like that would encourage it to open up a better dialogue with you?
Sub likes the same things you like, because you and your sub are not two different things. That's my opinion.
That's my opinion too.
Good.
And you've heard me say that. I've written about this now. If you read that piece carefully, you'll see you are your sub and your conscious moment. Yet there is a conversation. The sub is not, you have your conscious moment, but your sub is underneath that, like the bulk of an iceberg. And when you get information during a remote viewing session, it's coming from your sub up to the conscious moment. and there's opportunities to communicate. Okay, so then all of you may not have been there, so we'll go through this, but there are lots of suggestions I can put out, but the best are the stuff that comes into you, the stuff that resonates to you as a wild card. PhotoSites, I have no problem with PhotoSites. If that feels good with you, PhotoSites are quite interesting. When you do your feedback, you get them from either ours, and by the way, ours are all photos of real places, somewhere Deborah picked up. And I think at one time there was one that looked photoshopped. It wasn't, but some people thought it was. So she thought I was doing something which I'm not. They're all true photo sites, but hey, some people don't like some of mine. If they want to use Lens or other people's or Google, more power to them. I have no problem. I'm not the least bit defensive. This is one place you can go. You can go to Lynn Buchanan's. Photo sites are fine. But there are other things you can do. You can collect your own. You may be a nut about travel, and you may just want potential vacation sites. Put a bunch of them in envelopes because you don't want to be front-loaded. But there are other things you could do. You can come up with things that are interest to you, general things. You can put in the names of 50 people in sealed envelopes. And yeah, you'll be front-loaded a little bit in the sense that it'll be a person, but you won't know what that person is. And then you can do research and find out, first of all, what your sub has to say about that person. And notice you get to do 2 sessions. You do a remote viewing session, you do a feedback session, then you can do research. I frankly think this could be an educational tool for kids in school someday, where teachers put in random envelopes of subjects of interest and then they research them. And in doing the research, you're sending information back to the remote viewing time because we're all connected. We're working on the entanglement. Minimizing displacement might be a nice thing to have in one of those envelopes. I'm experimenting because I think I frankly can do this, where I have one general wildcard, which is asking my sub to provide information on being at the 80% success rate level as soon as possible in linear time. So every time I do a wildcard, and unfortunately, I only have time to do one remote viewing a week, two coordinates that I do for Chris. But my wild card is that, and I do it every time. And I feel I can handle that. I'm not being front-loaded. But I feel comfortable doing that, and that's what I'm choosing to do. Each of you have to come up with your own. And then this idea of doing an open session. That you certainly can do. You each have a open session with the tasking that we did here. The only part of it is that it wasn't a wild card, right? So you have your other coordinate, and with that other coordinate, I hope you're going to indeed do a open session. In fact, I would like you to do that right now. A shorter one than you usually do. Let's again just make it five minutes, because I'd like then to discuss it. Again, as an example of a wild card. I consider this to be the most open one in terms of opening up a dialogue with your subconscious, which I think you've all picked up. I consider to be a very important part of the journey we're on.
Marty, can you tell me if you're going to answer if the other photo site was also a person?
I'm not telling you anything about the other photo site. You will never, ever know. Like the Caldwell, those really are exceptions. And I make exceptions, frankly, only for educational purposes. If I think it's important enough where there's something really significant to be learned, I'll make an exception. But otherwise, you need to know that you'll never know that. And I don't, period. So you just always, your sub knows, or your sub can know if it wants to look, but I want to get it not to ever want to look. I want to get it so that you look into your own future feedback session. So what I'm looking for now is I don't have the other coordinate real handy, so I'm looking for the tasking. Okay, so here's an example. Okay, so the other coordinate is 812.610. Why don't you guys all write that down on a sheet of paper? 812.610. Now I know some of you take a lot more time than 5 minutes, and you should always do what you feel comfortable with. But for this one, we'll just take 5 minutes, including a cool down. I really do recommend you take a minute or two, frankly, for the cool down, because once you get quiet, the information tends to come quickly. Then you get quiet again, let information come again, and then I'll let you know when the 5 minutes are up. And what an open session is, you're basically going in, and you do this as part of the cool down, and we're in fact doing it now, is you set your intention. And basically an open session is subconscious, give me whatever you feel you'd like to give me in terms of our communication. So provide whatever you would like. Any questions on that?
Yeah, so we just do a transcript, just open randomly. We're not pulling a wild card. We're not going to pulling a photo from somewhere.
What you're doing is working with this idea of, hey, we're talking right now, Dave. Is there a lot of you that is not very present with you in your current conscious moment? You have a lot of stuff, a lot of capabilities, a lot of connection with things. Well, we call that the subconscious. What you're doing is going to get quiet, and the only intention you're going to have, rather than describing a future photo site, is your intention is subconscious. Give me whatever information you think will be valuable to me now. Do you understand that intent?
So we're doing the same thing twice, because we basically did that already.
That's exactly right. In fact, one thing, and I'm glad you said that, is we now know which is the target, right? You wrote that target now. Take a really quick look at that transcript. Take a look at the transcript, all of you. Take a look at that transcript. The
actualized one?
No. 812-610.
Okay.
Take a look at 812-610, all of you, and see if your sub might have been trying to tell you something about anything going on in your life right now. And notice this now is very personal. Was it trying to communicate something? Can you see any association there that might be of value?
Okay, I have something really interesting to say. Well, on the bleed-through side, for my other transcript, I wrote right on it what my sub needs, what my sub wants. And before I got into the Ku Klux Klan and everything that had to do with Lincoln, I was in a totally different place, drawing pictures about what I need.
And you think it fits. And it actually, that's beautiful.
Pool party and having fun and barbecuing, which was where I was, I guess my AOL, and then I got into the LinkedIn.
Okay, so that's...
I think it was what I needed. I think that's the self-actualization, and I think at the core of all of this, the most important thing is that we benefit personally from it, above and beyond anything else.
You got it. Now, isn't that a valuable thing to do, to get information from your subconscious? So that's what you're about to do now.
Absolutely not. I want to be repressed and not grow.
Okay,
So much more interesting.
so the rest of you, in a way that's personal to you, there may very well be information in that 812-610 session. Now that you've looked at that, you've sort of said, maybe, or there is, or I can see that. You're now going to do another session. You kind of got that front loading of maybe our sub was starting. It may want to tell you something new. It may want to tell you more on that. Okay, so let's take a few deep breaths. We'll get quiet, and we'll resume 5 minutes from now. Okay. begin cooling down, begin stopping here. Yeah, Steve, it is you. Okay. Okay, there's our 5 minutes. So what did you think about your open sessions? Talk to me. Russ, how about yours?
Well, I thought it was reflecting parallel timelines for quite some time, but just closing my eyes and thinking about it now, I'm seeing bandaged up and getting the word voting, so I don't know anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You know, you do get somebody, I think it's John always writes that, you get what you get and you write it down. Terrific. I mean, one nice thing about open sessions is they're always a hit because you get what you get, including sometimes you feel, gee, I got nothing. Well, okay, but that's what I got. And you're setting up the intention, however, and approach to keep doing this and building up a communication with your sub. And I certainly believe that the sub wants that communication channel to be there. And you guys must believe that as well, or you wouldn't be involved in precognition. Anybody else have a anything they want to share about their open session? Open sessions are, and it's one of the nice parts about it is they can be and are personal. So there may very well be things that you don't want to share in your open sessions. And that's true actually for all wildcard sessions. They're intended to be for you. Anything? No? You guys are all happy? Nobody else wants to share?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. It's Fuad here.
Yeah.
And I got a very specific impression of a place I've been before.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was a general area. It wasn't like a specific, location, but it was a place not too far away from where I live. And I got a very strong impression of a specific person as well.
Huh.
And I wasn't, it didn't feel like overlay. I just felt, and that's pretty much it. So I don't know exactly what happened, but I just got a sense of being somewhere I don't go very often with somebody I don't go there very often with. So I don't know. Again, that's just what came in.
Yeah, interesting. That's what your sub decided to give you, and it'll be interesting to see if it has deeper meaning in your consciousness, conscious living.
Did you have any emotions associated with that, Claude?
Just some very, very happy ones. And again, simple, happy emotions. It didn't feel like there was impending doom or anything like that. I don't know if anything important will happen there. I don't know, and I don't know if now I'll make something important happen there because I saw it. I don't know what the causality loop is. But again, that's just what came through. So I'll put this aside and see if it means anything later or if something in the past maybe triggered it.
Well, it certainly fits the category of interesting.
Yeah.
And it came from your sub. See, also notice you have another example of how that feels, of how that communication feels. And that's part of the feedback, is to just open up that.
The interesting thing was there was that moment of recognition that I haven't had in any sessions before because the targets have always been somewhere else. They've been a little abstract. But that was the first time I had, it wasn't as hazy. It was very specific. And it's that sense I've been here before.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, I got some happy emotions too in my session. I mean, it wasn't anything specific other than I did get like a warm, loving dog, and then just happy faces of people, which I translated being the people in this group, and we're having a good time and, you know, flowing positive emotions, and that's what adds to this experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, as we're learning more and more, emotions really are an important part of this entanglement process, and encouraging them, doing things which make them, quote, stronger, seems to be quite valuable. And the happy emotions, it's hard to think of better. Happy, loving emotions, just are wonderful ones to encourage. Also, aren't those ones that make you feel best? Might as well do everything you can to encourage them. So, anybody else want to share?
Why don't you unmute Steve and see if he has something to say, Marty?
Okay. There you go, Steve. What was your experience like?
I would say it was very helpful. I don't particularly want to share a whole lot about it, but it was very helpful.
Well, terrific. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else? I am gonna cut you off again. Anybody else?
This is Nancy. I have bright, happy, and then I've drawn all these funny curvy things on my paper that, as I look at my transcript that I drew before, are consistent with that. So I think that's interesting that it's the same shapes, and it looks really random and like contemporary art, but nonetheless, it's in both of them.
And that's what you got. Great. And you see, part of it also is setting up in your life the structure, which then opens up this opportunity for your subconscious to communicate with you. And I really believe that's very important for all of us to say, yeah, we really are committed to this for the long term, and I'm just going to keep doing it, and period. You know, sure. Will all of us be doing this 10 years from now? Who knows? There might be lots of reasons that other things will come in our life. We won't do it. Who knows? The sub might say, hey, it's time to stop, whatever. But I believe while you're doing this, you do it by leaving the time to do it right. Okay, let me just go a little further. I have 2 more slides after this to wrap up my thoughts on what we've been doing here with the wildcard and open sessions. Notice the wildcard can include others. Again, this idea of self-actualizing, self-realization, the viewer is in charge. All of those are recognitions of the fact that ultimately this is a very personal process. Precognition is kind of deep. I like to use the word deep. Higher, you're getting in touch with something which is a rather deep part of our conscious self. Now, the intellect is always trying to figure out how good can we get. You know, I have publicly stated my next major objective is 80%. Some people say, hey, that's way too high. Other people say, that's way too low. Why can't we get to 90%? You want to know? I don't know. We're living it. What we're actually going to be able to actualize in this physical world, our physical lives, this universe that I'm living in, all of my conscious moments, I'll have to wait and see. I like to use my precognition and come from a place which says it's nearly perfect. In other words, why not assume that? Why not come from a place where I indeed am entangled and can bring into my constant moment anything that I choose to. You know, why not take that point of view? If it turns out I don't achieve that, fine. But I know if I think I can only get 60%, all I'm going to get is 60%. I really believe that. So why not imagine we're nearly perfect? Why not come from a place which says my feedback session, which I know is in the universe of collective consciousness because I put it there. I experienced, let's say, this feedback session. I looked at my transcript and I got that at my transcript. At feedback time, I have my transcript. I have the feedback. I know that. That's in my consciousness. That's shared with everybody. Okay? There is this universe of collective consciousness. It just seems that's the way the universe works. Okay? Well, that means that at remote viewing time, I can get the information about the horse. I even have the information about my own transcript. I mean, the world we live in is not linear. We live in a connected, entangled world. Okay? So why not have this concept of this subconscious, this submerged part of consciousness, of my consciousness, a submerged part of me, okay, that has access at feedback time, where this is the truth moment, it's there. My sub experienced it. It is shared with this universal collective consciousness. Somehow, and I'm getting more and more this sense of a kind of cohesive binding energy, an entanglement energy that works at this subconscious level. It works in this non-physical space. And this is where emotions come in. This is where happiness comes in. This is where love comes in. This is where this entanglement somehow is. And this information comes up from the sub, and somehow a person can draw something like that, which we know happens. But this kind of model, why not go in believing that this information can happen nearly all the time? And the wild card is the same thing. You now see I'm getting close to a conclusion here, right? You can choose whatever you want for your wild card, and you can get information about it through your own sub and through the universal collective consciousness. Okay. Comments?
Self-actualizing
Hey,
is
Marty,
such
can
go ahead.
Marty, was Lincoln's life sort of birth to death, or was there any particular time period you had in mind?
None. What I had in mind for one of the wild cards was a person, because I've seen work done on people that was just incredible, and I've seen other people who said, I just don't get people. I never get people. I never get that sort of thing. And I hate when people put limits on themselves, because that's self-actualization as well. And so one of the targets I wanted to do was a person, and I intentionally wanted it to be vague, like Abraham. And Abraham Lincoln just came into my mind, and that's why I chose him.
Yeah, it's very easy to look at someone like Lincoln and see him then and see him now and see the legacy. It's interesting. The other thing I'm seeing when we do photo sites is I really do believe sometimes I'm picking up on what the photographer's thoughts are, and anybody who's influencing the photographer and the people that may not even be in the scene. and there was recently a thing with a crab, and for one of our groups, and I got all this other stuff that was all around the crab, like a pier and water, but I didn't actually. I got some sort of movement with an animal or something. So yeah, everything is out there. You know, it's
right?
That, you know, everything's out there.
It's true. Nancy, you were saying something.
Oh, the self-actualizing is just amazing to me, that concept of learning. I was distracted when we were doing our 5-minute wildcard just now with gratitude of the humor in communication between my physical body and my greater self. It's learning the language, and sometimes it's so entertaining, and it's so big. It's huge. I think self-actualizing is really what you nailed it. That's just what it is. We're learning how to be all of us, the whole. My whole is so much bigger than my little self.
Wonderful, wonderful. But yeah, you all have to understand how I'm on the exact same journey. And I just love it, and I love working with all of you, and it just makes me feel so good, and I have great gratitude for that as well. So, okay. Any reaction to this entanglement energy idea? I'm now kind of speaking to the, I guess, to the intellect part. I just more and more am getting this sense, and that, and I don't know how to make it real, that there's an entanglement energy and how that works, and it's controlled by something deep in the subconscious that entangles certain events and other events, and the most mysterious connections to the intellect that you could imagine. Just to pick an example at random, how about Caldwell? Why Mia and Nancy, that connection, and Tom's choice of the treetops, which was part of all this, how all of that could happen in this universe of collective consciousness, and yet there it is. We experience that. And what kind of entanglement energy causes that?
I think your article that you wrote really affected me with the, Tom said, were you emotional, Nancy, when you had that experience? And I thought, yes, I really was emotional. I used to think that there was this matrix that I couldn't see, but it was made up of energy. But now, with this experience of remote viewing and working with all of the wonderful people in our everything that we're doing together, all of us this morning, it feels as though the matrix energy is really emotion, and that's such a odd concept, but it just feels more and more true as we entangle. What are we entangling in? Well, it's emotion. We're connecting with each other.
I share some thoughts on this. I personally would say love, not emotion, but you might be right. I'll think about what you said. But what I was going to say is, to get that, what you're asking, Marty, it's almost, to me, you have to look at it from the other side, because, you know, we've all heard about the aperture. And when there's a connection with someone, you know, this aperture is much more open. It's much more easy to notice. You know who's going to ring the phone, or, you know those things. But there's also, I'm not usually sure this, but I'll just say it. You know, after years of meditation, I started doing Qigong, and I had the most life-altering experience of consciousness. I mean, it just was all like blasted wide open. Well, you can't function like that. To put it simply, you can't. You know, it's too muchness. Oh, it was just too muchness. But the awareness of that is is in the answer. That consciousness is very real. We are all connected, absolutely. And we have to have filters on it to live moment to moment, you know, in the particulars. So I guess I just wanted to mention that if we only look at it from the rational side of particulars, it's hard to get. So just think of the most wide open, nutty person you've ever met. Maybe they're, you know, too submerged in that and they don't have, I mean, I've helped a lot of people put those filters back on. You have to have them. You know, you have to be able to think. And both of those are part of all of us, that wide open vastness and the ability to, you know, just take each thing piece by piece. That's all I wanted to add.
No, that's very, very important, because I believe the goal is to integrate the left brain and right brain is one simple way of saying it. It's obviously more complicated than that. And the filters are part of that. And I think the communication, which at least I'm looking for, and I believe others are as well, is to grow it in a way where we don't go off the edge, where we still can function. I mean, I have said for many years I want to have one foot in this physical world and one foot in the spiritual world. Exactly. I want to live with my family. I love my family. I want to be able to continue to enjoy them for many, many years in this physical life. It's a marvelous physical life. And yet I do want to have more and more contact with the other. And for some reason I'm driven, as a lot of you are, to do this precognitive work. And it seems to be like a perfect place to manage this filtering in a better way.
And the balance.
Yeah, yeah. So that was really, thank you.
You're welcome.
Remote viewing is probably the best balanced place to do that. You know, there's a lot of other spiritual things. You get really deep into meditation and some other things. It's not as grounding and practical as remote viewing. Remote viewing is very real, and it really does keep you, you know, with your family and in that space, but also gives you the spiritual component. I think remote viewing exceeds other, you know, kind of spiritual disciplines in that regard. You can get kind of loopy if you do a lot of the other stuff. You can get pretty too far out there, and you lose touch, and you have to practice, I think, the 80-20 rule. You know, 80%, you know, being, you know, Marty's analogy, being with your family, you don't practice stuff, and 20%, you know, going to the other side. You don't want to go too far all the time.
You see, I have this dream. Notice all the people, virtually all the people that seem to be in this for the long term, get the spiritual side of this. If you don't kind of get the spiritual side of this, you don't stay. It's the grabber for the long term. And I have this dream that the paradigm shift that's going to come is going to bring with it this deeper spiritual realization that the two things are going to come together. That's
no, for sure.
That's part of the dream. You know, people say, "Gee, precognition, and what if the bad guys get it, and all that kind of stuff." And I suppose, just at least for all past experience, says that may be part of it. But I don't think it's going to be the dominant part of it. The spiritual part is going to be the dominant thing that's going to come along with the precognition.
Right. With the evolution, there's going to be transparency. If everybody knows everything all the time, the bad guys aren't really going to be able to exist.
Yeah, the lies won't work.
The lies won't work. Everything will be transparent. And you know, I've been thinking a lot about when are we really going to be consistently at 80+%. And I think, you know, I got to be optimistic and think it's going to be possible to maintain more or less around 80%. But, you know, to really get over 90%, this is just a feeling, it's certainly not scientific. I mean, I think we just have to evolve as people, and when everybody can do this, when there are no secrets, then we'll be consistently over 90%. You know, I think it's an evolutionary thing. I think we're on the forefront of something that's huge, and And you know, and I toy around all the time. I think about it. I wrote some email to one of the groups. We were talking about different things, and you know, I mean, the consequences of Marty's groups, and now Chris has a group, you know, being consistently over 80%. I mean, there's huge responsibility and consequences that come with that. And who's going to be knocking on our door if we're at 80% consistently, and you can validate that? Who's going to be knocking on our door? We're going to have the light and the dark. The government's going to be coming. Every bookie in town, everybody who wants. I mean, the consequences are huge, and you know, and it's potentially problematic. I mean, it's something, and it may be one of the reasons why we're not consistently, just one of the reasons why we're not consistently over 80%.
And it's those thoughts, in my opinion.
Is that what you're going to say?
Dave, yeah, I that was good stuff. And those kind of thoughts are partially limiting because there's a certain element of fear in there. And I even brought it up when I was talking about the, you know, bad guys and stuff like that. Right. Yet it's us who are going to have to make it happen, and make it happen, I believe, in a grassroots way. One thing you said, which I'd like to clarify, you used the word evolutionary. I believe this is different in the following sense. It's not going to be at the DNA evolutionary level. It is going to be at the consciousness level, which may change the DNA over generations. But consciousness is now working in a way through us. This idea of connectedness is happening through us. And what I hope happens is we will evolve and bring in more and more people. Now, you know, we will grow. We will have other groups start. And as that happens, there will be more and more energy generated. And we will get to this 90% level that you're talking about, because there will be so many of us who are basically seeing how positive this, in fact, will turn out to be. So it's that really positive vision and spreading it to more and more people that is, in fact, going to actualize it, in my opinion. But
you know,
not...
I had an image when you were talking about the consciousness down there, that you've got blue, and all of us kind of like a little poor little aperture, and it's opening its own apertures to, you know, come up. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and there's a collective aperture, and we're
That's
part
right,
of and we're part of opening that up.
Yeah.
And you know, there are people who are on the fuzzy boundary of us who sort of are seeing it or thinking about joining us, and at the subconscious level at some point they will. Okay,
it's all entangled.
Yep.
So I guess it'd be okay to be at 80%, just you know, we'll have to see what happens. Yeah, I don't want to have a limiting belief about it.
Don't carry one. I've sent that as a linear time objective. I happen to believe it's much higher than that. But I don't know when in linear time it's going to be achieved. So just going forward from the place that it's out there. So please don't have anything I've said limit you, Dave. You keep your high.
It's the opposite. No, it's what I said is actually limit me. But
that's right.
The opposite.
Okay, good. Okay, unless there's some final comments, I'd like to thank you all for coming and call it a webinar.
Thanks, Marty. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. It's been great.
Thank you so much for all of your effort and work that you put into it.
Well, and thank you all. And keep 1ARVing. And keep having fun.
Bye, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, good. Bye now.
Okay, take care.
Goodbye, thank you.